and you're
Yeah.
trying to get into that entry level house.
Starter homes are gone.
Okay. What's interesting about getting all these purchase agreements in one time, like I mentioned, I got 12 purchase agreements going at one time.
Yeah.
And the whole argument that a lot of people give me right now, and it's very true, is affordability. How do we afford
Yeah.
getting into a house?
100%.
And so let's consider that a little bit because we have these buyers. I mean, how many buyers do you and I have going right now
Yeah.
that are active,
Yeah.
that are out there trying to buy?
Yep.
So we have our move up buyers.
Yep.
That's one way
Yeah.
to kind of close that affordability gap is because you're selling a house and you have more money to put down
Yep.
on the next house, right?
Yeah.
But if you're that first time home buyer and you're
Yeah.
trying to get into that entry level house,
Yeah. Those, and that's the thing is those starter homes, they used to be that's what, oh, starter home, get a starter home, get a starter home. The starter homes are gone.
yeah, unless you can spend $400,000 for a starter home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they're so far and few in between to be able to get into something. There was one house over here in the St. Paul area, and it's a two bedroom, one bath, 625 square feet, and they're asking 250 for it, 240 and some change. $250,000 for that here in St. Paul.
And it's not a big house.
No, six and a quarter, that's it. 625 square feet. That's it.
Yep. So how many bedrooms does it have?
Two.
Two bedrooms. And it's $250,000.
Yeah. Now the challenge with that is you've got sellers who are looking at it's a very nice house. They did $70,000 in renovation work. Everything you move right in. It's very nice. It's very IKEA worthy, right? Like you can take the projects that IKEA has on display and put them into these rooms, into the kitchen and stuff, and it's perfect for that. The challenge is that the seller doesn't want to move on any of it because for them in their head, they said, well, Airbnb will get me the money that I need for this payment. And so they're transferring their thought process into the sale price, into the purchase of the house, and said, you, meaning me, representing my buyer, they can buy it and do Airbnb. And I was like, that's not what they want. They want
No,
that's don't project your thought of
your vision.
would be. Yeah, absolutely. But that goes into that whole thought process. Okay, if there are no starter homes, I mean, yes, there are, but they're far and few in between.
Well, and
What's
they're
what's a
dumps.
what's a buyer to do?
You know that, so a couple things that we wanted to talk about today,
Yep.
a couple things that we're going to get through. We're going to talk about what it looks like if you were to buy a duplex.
Yeah.
Then we can use my son as an example, who bought in a suburb of a suburb. That's what I like to say, and has a buddy of his, it's actually a friend of a friend,
Yeah.
renting from him to help make his payment. But what you just said is kind of an interesting idea. Now, I've noticed, and you could correct me if I'm wrong because you have Airbnb experience. I do not.
Yeah.
If someone were to buy a house, say in that St. Paul area or like another area it's around stuff, could someone buy that house and not actually give themselves a permanent roommate, but Airbnb out a room for
You-
say 2 weekends a month. Is
Yeah.
that is that a thing? Do
Yeah.
people
You can
host?
rent just a room and you host for
You
that.
host someone.
Yep.
So at my house right now,
Bridget
where
and
I
I
live,
actually did that when we went to go visit Fernando out in his neck of the woods out in Virginia Beach. We rented a room that was inside of a townhome, and they in this particular setup there was a room on the main level, and then their living quarters they had two rooms upstairs, and so they just rent and with it being the largest naval bases, the largest concentration of Navy in on the East Coast in the world, right? Um, that transitional piece, those I don't want to say transients, I don't know if that sounds right.
people
But
are coming and going. It's the
coming and
military, right?
going, yeah, absolutely. And so they were just renting the one room. And they gave you access to the living room if you wanted. They gave you access to the kitchen. We
How
just
much was
used
it a
it to
night?
sleep. Oh, I don't know. It was like, I think a buck and a quarter.
Okay. And how many nights?
We stayed 3 nights.
3 nights. So so at a buck and a quarter. So you're
Yep.
at 375 bucks.
Oh, good point. I like where you're going with that.
You do that for 2 weekends. You don't have anyone staying with you for the week,
Yeah.
and you have 650 bucks or 700
Yeah.
that you can apply right towards your mortgage, right?
Yeah. So there's that house hacking piece.
Yep.
You and I were talking about, okay, getting roommates on a more long-term permanent basis. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. As long as you're compliant with the municipality, with the city's short-term leasing or short-term rental agreement piece,
Right.
you're golden. And it's something that you can run. Because there's when you do Airbnb, there's some companies out there that'll help manage them, but they want to see multiple properties, right? They'll only do
Sure.
it because they get a cut of it. And so they want to make sure that their exchange for time and management is appropriate for that. So, but yeah, that's a great
Airbnb,
hack.
yeah, buy a house and Airbnb a room to help pay your mortgage so you can do that.
Yeah.
And then when we move into what Brock did, it's funny because I'm actually working on a video specifically for his story, so I won't go into the whole thing
Okay.
on it. But what's interesting about Brock, he bought when he was 20 years old. And he bought at a
Mhm.
time where interest rates were actually higher than what they are right now. His rate is 7.25
Okay.
on conventional loan, right?
Yeah.
But where Brock wanted to look, he wanted to look close to where he worked. But when we looked at home prices, there we go again. Starter home, 20-year-old kid. How do we do it? So we
Yeah.
looked in a suburb of a suburb. And what I like to use that term, the suburb of the suburb,
Yeah.
because that's where he lives. He
Yeah.
lives in a small town. I think they have 2,000, maybe 3,000 people in the town itself, but it's 30
Okay.
minutes away from Rochester, which is a major city
Yeah.
here in Minnesota.
Yep.
So he's 30 minutes away from all the shopping that he needs.
Yeah.
He has a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom house, a 3 car garage. And because he bought in a suburb of a suburb, kind of rural in a small town, he bought a great house for $175,000.
Okay.
Now,
So
yeah. So
where
we
matters
pushed,
so much.
yes. And for him, that was pushing its budget to be even that high. I mean, he was good to go up to almost 200.
Yeah.
Maybe not. The house ended up being 179. So we're in getting close to the top of his budget,
Yeah.
which even in rural, we had to get close to the top of the budget so we could get him a decent house. We also used Minnesota Housing because we couldn't use other
Yeah, sure.
programs at the time for this purchase. So for $1,000 down, he got into a nice house.
Yeah.
His mortgage payment is 1,550 bucks about there. I mean, there's
Okay.
some, it's like 1552 and some change.
Yeah.
He has a one of his buddies that he's now buddies with, right? But it was a friend of a friend
Oh,
who
okay.
has a good job, needs a place to crash, wants to live in a house, sick of the apartment life.
Yeah.
So Brock's like, move in with me. I have two extra rooms
Yeah.
and I'll charge you 750 bucks. And the guy's like, that's it for to share a house? And he's like, yep,
Yep.
just share some utilities with me, buy some groceries,
Yeah.
the whole
That,
stuff
yeah.
when you're gonna have someone live with you, however you want to set it up. But it essentially covers half his mortgage.
And that's how I did it when I bought my first house after I came home from the Navy. I bought my first house and I didn't need, let's see, it was one, two, it was 3 bedrooms. I didn't need 3 bedrooms.
No,
I just needed the one. And so I had well, both of them are actually friends from high school. Um, one was studying, he was getting his college degree, he was getting his bachelor's degree. Actually, he might have been working on his master's at that time, but it doesn't matter. And the other one was working and they both rented out the rooms. And so it helped out. And you don't have to be the only one living in the home.
no, absolutely not, because you're not going to be most kids that are in that Generation Z
Yeah,
group and some of the younger millennials, they're thinking, oh, I need $20,000 to buy a house.
correct. Yep.
I can't afford it. Look at these home prices. I don't know if
Yep.
they're always thinking that, you know, I'm helping a nice young lady right now, and it clicked in her head. She's paying $2,000 a month for rent
Yeah.
so she can be in the city. And she's like, why am I paying $2,000 rent? Even with a roommate, you're paying $1,000
Yeah.
just so you can be, maybe in a location. So I don't know. My idea or my thought is if you're going to be paying a lot of money and affordability is a thing,
Yeah.
you're probably going to have a roommate anyways if you're renting an apartment or it's going to be a significant other.
Yeah.
Why not look at what it really looks like to buy a home like this? I got this other kid. He's 24. He's buying a house in a suburb of a suburb again.
Yeah.
He's just buying it, but he's going to have his gal move in with him,
Yeah.
and she's agreeing to pay half of it.
And that's the thing is like, so if there's not a starter home available, create one, right?
Yes,
Use the rent by the room strategy.
rent by the room or the Airbnb that we talked about,
Yeah.
or what one of the other kids did. He bought a duplex.
Yes.
The military kid bought a $300,000 duplex,
Yeah.
100% financing because the VA loan.
Yep.
So his mortgage payment is 2,200 bucks a month. He gets 1,500 bucks a month in rent.
And the
What does
thing
that make
is,
his payment?
is that the VA loan will do up to 4 units if
Yeah,
you find one.
exactly. So these are just hacks that you really can think about
Yeah.
when you're like, I want to buy a house, but affordability,
Yeah.
rates are high, home prices are going up. And I think what our younger people forget about, they hear the news about like 2008 and what happened there.
Yeah.
They just heard it. They didn't live through it like you and I did.
Correct.
But then when you think about the 80s that I lived through and you lived through too, but we weren't buying homes in the 80s, luckily,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when I looked at,
What's
yeah,
coming around, what goes around comes around, right?
it sure does. And the big thing about the 80s, interest rates were double digit. The
Yeah.
peak was 18.3%. And this is what young people really, just everyone, but specifically young people who are, the market's going to crash or I'm waiting for rates to come down or
Yeah.
whatever. In the 80s, double digit interest rates, the peak was 18.3%.
Wow.
Okay. Feds were fighting inflation. Home prices throughout the 80s increased on average 4.3% a year. That's with double digit interest rates, dude. So right now, people are crying if they're in the high sixes, low
Yeah.
sevens, because they're so used to. Think about the last 15 years. We
Yeah.
had the market crash. So then we went through the Great Recession and we
Yep.
saw interest rates low then, fours,
Yep.
fives. Then we get the pandemic and we have interest rates in the twos,
Yeah.
twos and threes. I'm at 3% myself.
Yep.
So then all of a sudden rates go up like they have, and we look at 7%, people aren't realizing that's kind of the average interest rate since like 1972.
Yep.
That average interest rate includes the decade of the 80s where we're in the double digits, and
Yeah.
it includes the the 2019-20-ish range
Yeah.
during the pandemic when we're getting 3%.
Yep.
So now that we're back where things kind of are, we're still seeing homes appreciating. Home prices are still going up. Cost of wage or cost of living is not keeping up as far as people's pay goes.
Yep.
Airbnb in a room, renting a room or two, or buying a duplex are some great ways. They're great affordability hacks.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, is that if you're talking about that interest rate and you're waiting, you got to factor in the cost of waiting, right? Because you could
Right.
buy, let's say you get a home today at 300,000 and the interest rate is 7%. But if you wait because you want to wait for the rates to go down, in 6 months, if that house has gone up, because you're talking about that 4%, and especially right now when we're at the top of or we're starting to roll into the heat of that spring season, early summer housing market, um, that house is not going to be $300,000 in 6 months. It's going to be 315, right?
I'm going to be higher than that.
Yeah. And so if even if you waited until the interest rate dropped down to 6.5% at 315, sure, you're going to save $5 on your mortgage payment, but you would have only have saved $263 in interest, right? But you would have paid an additional $15,000 for the house, the same house.
Well, not to mention that, let's say you're renting and you
Yeah,
wait another 6 months
yeah,
and your rent is just call it $1,000 a month.
yeah,
So now you've just thrown out another $6,000 on
yeah,
rent,
yeah,
plus your home price has gone up, and now your interest rate, it's not seven anymore, it's
yeah.
six and a half.
Yep,
Because that's what we're honestly looking at by the end of the year is
yep.
being around that six and a half,
So
six
this
point
this
six
this house hacking, I tell people it's a cheat code. It's a cheat code to getting that first house. It's a cheat code to starting that path for that financial freedom, starting that path for that generational wealth. It's a cheat code, the house hacking piece. Because on the top of that, like if you keep that property as a rental, you can buy another house. You can, whether it's FHA or if it's VA or conventional, you can buy another property and keep that property as a rental. You got to follow the guidelines, but there's guidelines to be followed in order for you to be able to do that. And so you repeat that house hacking and then you build a rental portfolio. You can even use that same house and sell it and trade up. Use a 1031 exchange to trade up without paying on taxes if you do it that way.
There's
Um,
so many things that you can do.
yeah,
And if you do Airbnb or you rent out
yeah,
rooms, you'll know pretty quick if you feel like that's for you,
yeah,
being a landlord.
yeah. And
And
you
it's a
can do this at
soft,
any age. Right now we've
Yeah.
got the average first-time home buyer starting out at 38 years old. You don't have to wait until then. You can do it when you're in your 20s, which gives you more time to leverage, but don't wait. Don't wait.
Well, check this out. I'm working on getting someone qualified right now who is listening to our house hacking stuff, getting her qualified. She's 18,
Outstanding.
18 years old, and she's looking at how to buy a house. She's asking questions. What are the smart ways to do this? What are some down payment assistance programs I can qualify for? Can I rent out rooms like you said?
Yep. Yeah.
Asking those questions. And then when she looks at a house and we look at the payment, she looks at how much maybe she can rent a room out for.
Yeah.
So it's it's a strategic way. It's not permanent. And if you're young, you don't really care anyways. I mean, did you care you had a couple other guys living with you when you were right out of the Navy?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no. That was I was able to spread out
Yeah,
versus
no.
being on the ship where it was stacked three on top of each other.
Yeah, so now you have three bedrooms, it's just like, hey, just clean up after yourself, right? Help
Yeah.
out with cleaning a bathroom and run a
Yeah.
vacuum once in a while and you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the
So that is
starter. That's
good
you
stuff.
create that starter.
Yep. So we've kind of established that starter homes are hard to find.
Yep.
You could look in a suburb of a suburb. It's your
Yep.
first home. You don't have to be 38. You can look at all those different options that we talked about to get into your first home. And all
Yeah,
you have to do is call Isaac or call the guys over here.
that's right. That's exactly right. That's why we're doing this keys and closings podcast.
That's right. Keys and closings. It's like episode 6, I think.
That's right. I got the keys and he's got the closings.
Got the closings.